One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. Western Illinois Athletic Director Matt Tanney is with us today on One Question. And Matt, you have an internal focused background, starting at a couple of different institutions, but you spent some time at Dayton. Obviously, you got back to Western Illinois as an associate AD for internal, became deputy, and then athletic director, of course, now for the last 2 years.
Yep.
Right at 2 years. I'm curious how someone with your background, internal operations, compliance, student athlete, academic services, how do you make sure that you don't get pulled in as the de facto decision maker on every little decision in those types of areas because of your expertise when you're the AD and you have to oversee so many additional departments and areas of focus? How do you, whether it's a delegation issue or you've told your people in this situation, you make the call, it's your decision. How do you kind of control your time and make sure you don't get sucked in too much to that side of the department?
Sure, and I think, with anybody's background, depending on how they come up in this business, there's probably going to be that sort of that natural gravitation to whatever particular area you got your start in. Like you said, for me, in my background, it has been more of the internal side. So I have combated that a little bit, I guess, with making sure that my staff understands that, like you said, in certain situations, they are the authority. They do have the ability to make those decisions, and I'm fortunate here that we have the staff that can do that. But I think there's also a fine line there, because then you have to differentiate between what is the situation where you can have somebody on your staff make that decision, and when do I need to step in and make sure that we're doing everything we need to be doing. So there's a bit of a balance that goes with that.
Is there a specific, right now, given the landscape, is there a specific topic or point of discussion within the internal side of the department that you are more focused on than you have been previously, that you have told your staff, like, hey, come to me with this issue because I want to be involved in every discussion?
Yeah, I think probably most recently it's been all the conversation with FLSA and how that's impacted our department, and that's something I've been very heavily involved in. Obviously, with things changing a week ago with the federal judge making that decision, that's sort of slowed our implementation on our campus in terms of how we're going to handle it. But that's one thing that I have been pretty heavily involved in.
Who else on your campus do you interface with on the FLSA conversation?
We have a vice president for administrative services, and there's also a committee on campus, legal counsel as well, a couple of other folks, but those have been my primary contacts.
We just finished soccer season, volleyball just concluded, certainly a number of other footballs not too far in the rearview mirror. How do you structure post-season head coaching meetings and reviews? What do you prepare? What do you ask the head coach to prepare?
Sure. So I kind of approach it two different opportunities to have those conversations. I think after each season, there is a more informal sit down that I'll have with each coach, and it's just really just kind of break down the season, thoughts going into because inevitably our coaches lead right into the recruiting cycle and the recruiting seasons. Just sort of a recap of the year of whatever the competitive season is. And then from that point, really wait until the spring, summertime. Our university requires formal performance evaluations. So then at that time, there's a little bit more of a cooling off period for most of our sports. Obviously, baseball and softball, a couple other teams are still in the midst of that. But then I ask all of our coaches to bring with them, what they would like to see as 5 program goals for the coming year, and where do they see the direction of their program going, and then I'll bring in my own 3 to 5 goals as well, and then we build the conversation based on those talking points, and then I'll also have a 10 to 12 point really a 360-degree review of the program, everything that they've done related to fundraising. How do they interact in the community? How do they interact with everybody else in the department? And there's usually not a shortage of things to talk about there.
In that 360 degree, do you kind of freelance that, or have you designed some type of framework or rubrics that you work off of?
It's a structured document. And different. It's probably not unlike most other evaluation forms where it has different levels and areas of improvement and different notations. And then the coach has an opportunity to provide feedback on that as well. And that's what we use to build that conversation.
But that's something you created. That's not something standard from the university.
It's not something that I have specifically created. I've tweaked it. I've gotten it from some other colleagues that I've worked with before, and sort of built it from there and catered it to what I think best fits our needs.
Do you, in those conversations, when we talk about improvements, critical, constructive feedback, are you the type to handle those and tackle those first within the conversation, or kind of as they come?
I think it's more as it comes. I don't think it's prudent to sit down with a coach and really just throw that at them like, let's talk about the one thing that you absolutely have to improve upon in between this year and next year. And most of the time you've got that relationship with the coach. You've got you're talking to them on a regular basis, and so I would say 99% of the time the coach isn't surprised by anything that's going to come up in that conversation. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, in my opinion, then there should be no surprises at that end of the year meeting. The coach knows areas that he or she needs to improve on. They know areas that he or she has done well during the course of the past year, and then you build it from there.
In terms of the post follow-up from those conversations, is there commonly an exchange of emails or an official document that says, hey, we agree on these goals for the program going forward, and here's how we're going to measure them? Or do you usually walk out of the meeting already having those together?
We usually have those together by the time the meeting is over. Yeah.
Interesting. What are there any unique stories from head coaching reviews in your short tenure as an AD that you would point to as learning moments or teaching moments?
No, Matt, I would say that, like I said, thankfully at this point, I haven't had anything that's been completely off the wall, and I think that's a byproduct of being able to work with the coaches and having good relationships with the coaches. And the fewer surprises, I think, both on the coach's end and on my end, the better.
One other angle on that line of questioning. At what point in your analysis are you taking into account student-athlete feedback, whether those are exit interviews or other communication you've had with the team throughout the year?
Yeah, that's a great point. We've actually really revamped the way that we're approaching student-athlete feedback, and I'm always seeking student-athlete feedback because that is certainly a piece of the puzzle when it comes to that overall evaluation of the program. But I'm having those conversations both in person, and we're actually using a new survey tool called Student-Athlete Viewpoint that allows us to really get a good sense from the student athletes of every facet of the department. And I know every institution sort of has their own model for how they do this, but this is something that's a little bit different than what we have done before in terms of getting all of that data from our student athletes. And I'm looking forward to using that much more intensely than we have in the past to be able to help shape some of those conversations.
And is that Michael Cross's new product?
That is. It's Michael Cross, yeah.
Right. So we'll plug him a little bit here, which was not.
You bet.
You bet. Yeah, not by design, but that's interesting to hear you say you're using that. And of course, for those who are listening and maybe don't know, Michael Cross is the former AD at Bradley, and right. He's back at Penn State now. And so tell me a little bit more about why you see his framework and that product being really beneficial for that process for you guys.
Yeah, I just think what that survey will be able to provide us is a level of depth of information and specific feedback on specific coaches, not necessarily give a general answer as to how do you feel your coaches performed this year, good, average, or superior. I think this particular survey tool will allow us to get much more in-depth information, and Mike has done a nice job of setting that up in terms of how we can get that data and then use it when I'm having conversations with our coaches.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.